Leonardo da Vinci. When we hear that name, we think of this once-in-a-millennium genius. But what if I told you his incredible creativity wasn't some random lightning strike of inspiration? What if it was actually a system, a repeatable formula that not only explains his genius, but, get this, is also backed by the cold, hard laws of mathematics? So let's decode the system behind one of history's greatest minds and see what it means for us. You ever get that feeling? The world is just moving so fast. We've got AI changing every industry, the economy feels, well, unstable, and there's this quiet fear in the back of your mind of just becoming irrelevant. Turns out, Da Vinci lived in a world that was just as chaotic, but he figured out a way not just to keep up, but to stay like 500 years ahead of everyone else. And this, right here, is the big idea we're diving into. We're going to throw out that old myth that genius is some magical, unexplainable gift that only a few people get. The truth, and we're going to see this through Da Vinci's life and through the lens of math, is that genius is really just a process. And the best part about a process, it can be learned. Okay, so to really understand the system, we first have to get the man himself. Not the legend you see in museums, but the real guy who had to deal with some very real-world problems and somehow turn them into his greatest assets. I mean, just look at this list. On the surface, it looks kind of like a recipe for failure, right? He was an illegitimate son, so boom, no university for him. He was famous for leaving projects unfinished. Honestly, you could look at his entire career as just a long string of failures. But here's the twist. These weren't roadblocks. They were the very things that forced him to invent his own way of seeing the world, his own way of creating. And the proof, the absolute proof of his method, it's right here. Over 7,000 pages of his private notebooks, his codex, have actually survived. And they are messy. They're chaotic, just filled with sketches, questions, half-baked ideas. This wasn't some neat and tidy journal. It was an engine. It was his way of trapping every single thought before it disappeared. And hidden inside all that chaos was a system, a remarkably consistent one. It wasn't about sitting around waiting for a muse to show up. It was a machine he built for himself, a repeatable process that could turn a simple observation into something absolutely extraordinary. So we can actually break his whole process down into 5 core parts. It always started with observation, really seeing the hidden patterns all around him. Then, super important, he'd record it, trap that idea on paper. Next, he'd prototype, test it out in the real world. From there, he'd synthesize, connecting ideas from totally different fields. And finally, he would just iterate, constantly refining and reimagining. It's this disciplined loop that just keeps feeding itself. And you gotta understand, of all these steps, the recording part was everything. His notebooks were basically an external hard drive for his brain. By writing it all down, he freed up his mind. It meant he could come back to an idea months or even years later, connect it to something new, and take it to the next level. Nothing was ever really lost. And he didn't just scribble randomly. He had this little micro-habit he practiced every single day in his notebooks, the OQT cycle. He'd make an observation, ask a question about it, and then design a tiny experiment to test his curiosity, even if it was just a quick little sketch. It's how he turned passive seeing into active, relentless learning. But his real superpower? Oh, it was synthesis. See, where everybody else was building walls between different subjects, Da Vinci saw it all as one big connected web. He'd study the anatomy of a smile, every single muscle, and then apply that science to his art to create the Mona Lisa. He used the physics of light to create the illusion of depth in his paintings. This fusion, this is what let him create things no one else could even conceive of. So it's easy to look back and just chalk it all up to luck, right? Maybe he was just the right guy in the right place at the right time. But was this incredible system of his just a historical fluke? Or is there something way deeper going on here? This is where it gets really interesting, because it turns out the reason his system was so powerful isn't just a matter of historical opinion. It's a matter of math. Yeah, his system worked because, whether he knew it or not, it was perfectly in sync with these universal principles of how creativity actually functions, principles that are grounded in mathematics. Okay, check this out. This is where it all clicks. Da Vinci's methods map directly onto these fundamental mathematical laws. First, you've got the law of large numbers. Basically, the more you try, the higher your chances of a home run. His 7,000 pages of notes, a perfect example. Then there's combinatorial creativity, his constant mixing of art and science. Then the edge of chaos. His notebooks were in that sweet spot between total mess and rigid order, which is where new patterns emerge. And finally, exponential growth. Every little observation, every tiny experiment, it all compounded over his lifetime into just unbelievable skill. Zipf's law explains this so well. For anyone doing creative work, most of your ideas are going to be just okay. Some will be pretty good, and a teeny tiny fraction will be absolutely brilliant. So the key isn't to try and only have brilliant ideas, because that's impossible. The key is to produce such a massive volume of ideas that you can't help but hit those brilliant outliers. Quantity is literally the path to quality. And this idea is the engine behind all that synthesis we were talking about. So much of what feels new is really just a clever remix of things that already exist. Think about it like a box of Legos, right? You might have a limited number of bricks, but the number of things you can build is practically infinite. Da Vinci was just a master at finding new ways to snap the bricks together. All right, so what does this all mean for us, right now, in our own lives? The amazing thing about this system is that it's not stuck in the Renaissance. We can build our own genius formula by using these exact same principles today. So let's boil it all down. Here's how we can do this today, in 4 pretty simple steps. Number 1, produce more. Just embrace the law of large numbers. Don't judge your ideas, just get them out. 2, combine relentlessly. Read outside your field. Talk to people who think differently. 3, stick with it. Give your efforts time to compound. And 4, review and refine. Every so often, look back at your own notebooks and find the hidden connections. And really, it all comes down to this. Genius isn't some miracle that falls out of the sky. It's a process. It's about having the tools, and they can be as simple as a notebook and your own 2 eyes, and then having the discipline to use them, day in and day out. So look, Da Vinci basically left us the blueprint, and now math confirms exactly why it works. The secret's out. It's not magic, it's a process, and it's available to any of us who are willing to do the work. So I guess the only question left is, what are you going to build with it?